Welcome, everyone. Can see people filtering in. It's great to have you all here on a Wednesday afternoon. Um, I'm excited to connect with all of you. I think this is a very timely topic, and we're going to try to make it as practical, and actionable as possible. Um, as people are filtering in, I'll introduce the myself and the agency. So I'm Peter Anania. I'm the CEO here at Brassbound. I'm also in charge of all our ad strategy, brand strategy work that the agency does. Um, my background's in private equity. So I started my career um, basically as a CMO for a private equity firm. And I would be in charge of, as we acquire new companies, rebranding, building the marketing strategy. And it was a great start to my career. I got to see a lot of companies grow very fast, and some of those companies have gone public as well, which has been great. I'm joined by Eleanor, our account manager. Um, Say hi to everyone, Eleanor. Um, Eleanor's background, she's worked at Apple. She's worked at some of the bigger agencies in Philadelphia and New York. So uh, very lucky to have her at our agency. Eleanor, if you have anything to chime in. But just glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I've loved working for Brassbound specifically because I get to partner with different kinds of organizations with different kinds of goals. So it's been really fun and impactful learning how to help the companies that we do. So I'm excited to have the webinar. Of
Well, thanks for joining me.
course.
Um, I want this to be as valuable and interactive as possible. So, Eleanor, I'm going to ask if you can, if there is any chat. Sometimes people are a little shy, but if you have any questions, just throw them in chat as we go along. And like I said earlier, I'm a very practical guy. I can't help but be practical. So we're trying to make this as actionable as possible. A little bit of what we're going to talk about today. When I host a webinar, I really like to start with the challenge. Like, why are we even having this webinar? And we're going to frame it. I mean, this is sort of the things that Eleanor and I see every day working with clients. So we're just going to, I know there are some CMOs, some marketing directors. We also have some executives on this webinar. So I think, for the CMOs and the marketing directors, it's just the challenge are just going to be like, yep, this is exactly what we're experiencing. This is what we're seeing in the market. Um, And I guess I just like to do it this way because it's, why is this webinar important? Why are we here? Then I want to plant a seed of exponential versus linear impact. I like to think of the things we're going to be talking about: messaging, targeting, creative quality, platform selection, tracking, and then customer experience. When we have all these things dialed in, the impact is exponential. We're not seeing, linear impact with these things. The impact is that we're going to see from dialing these things in is going to be exponential on our campaign. So we'll dive into that. We're going to be talking about messaging. We're going to be talking about targeting, creative quality, platform selection, tracking, customer experience. So why we select these topics, these are just the things Eleanor and I see. These are the things we tweak to get exponential returns for clients when we come in and um, take over advertising campaign or marketing campaign. Um, so I have some notes here on the challenge. And my first note is let's get real about the marketing landscape in 2025. Okay. It's been a rough 5 years for marketing professionals, for in-house agencies, for agencies. I mean, it's been just tough for everyone. Okay. We've had the pandemic, we've had culture wars, all sorts of a lot of political stuff going on. So all sorts of change, technology exploding faster than ever. There's a lot going on. Um, and what we're feeling, I know there's some CMOs on here and some marketing directors, is we're feeling that budgets are getting tighter. the competition out there is getting fiercer, and expectations, whether it's expectations of an agency, expectations of an in-house team, expectations of a CMO, are getting uh, higher. And I read the CMO spend survey every year. I just picked a couple quotes here because I'm just trying to get the juices flowing for what's the challenge, and why the heck are we even having why am I suggesting this webinar? Like, why are we having it? And I just loved this line: CMOs are living in an era of less. Yes, that is 100% true. We're all expected to get more out of our campaigns and spend less. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. And the good news is it's certainly possible. The other quote I chose here is just a mind-blowing one, but it makes complete sense. And for the 4 years preceding the pandemic, budgets before were 11% of overall revenue in this survey of CMOs. And in the 4 years since the pandemic, they've gone down to 8.2% of revenue for marketing budgets. That's huge. That's pretty much a 50% drop being reported in the CMO spend survey. So I guess my question for everyone out there attending this webinar is, and I know the answer to it is, do you feel like the expectations have dropped or increased on us as marketing professionals? And the point of this webinar is really to, how do we meet these higher expectations? Just quickly to frame this challenge, our specialization, we do have verticals that we specialize in, but we also love working with local clients. I said I have a private equity background. It was working with a lot of local companies and throughout New England. So a lot of our clients have 200 employees or less. And when they come to us, here's just more to get the juices flowing. I want to just talk about what we see. What are some common things that we see when clients come to us? Now, it's great when a client has a budget, but we find a lot of clients that come to us, they've taken the time to create a budget, but they haven't taken the next step to actually create a strategic plan. And as we go through this webinar, you're going to see, I can hint back to why that's really important, because, you have a budget, but, no strategic plan. And what we see is they just kind of go with what they've always done. They're just doing the same thing. There's no strategic thinking there. Another big one here, I think, in New England is investing in platforms that don't reach their audience. What we see is a lot of clients come to us and they're gonna spend money with the reps. I'm gonna say that they're the squeakiest wheel. The print reps, that's the squeakiest wheel. The cable rep, that's the squeakiest wheel. The broadcast rep, that's the squeakiest wheel. They're just gonna, they have this budget they've allocated. They don't have a strategic plan, so they're gonna just invest in platforms that they always have, or like I said, the rep is very vocal, but not the ones that their actual audience are in. And we want to bring, let's say it's a hospitality organization, we want to bring younger demographic in. Okay, well, local news isn't, local news is great. I love local news, but is it really the best for that target demographic to be on? Next problem that we see is a lack of alignment between marketing vendors. See this very commonly. We have the media buyer, we have the SEO agency, we have the creative agency, and without, maybe there wasn't a strategic plan, or there's not, communication, but we see these different vendors working on things differently, and there's just not alignment between their efforts. We're going to talk about this last one. I just want to say it because we see it so often. And that's just being a mismatch between the platform the creative's on and the actual what the actual creative is. So, I cringe when I see a 30-second broadcast spot, but it's only on social media. That's an example of that. There's a very specific formula for creating a reel, for creating video for social media, and what works for broadcast, isn't necessarily going to work for these other platforms. So these two slides were really just to frame the problem. I like to start that way. um, uh, just so we can know why we're here. Really quickly, for me, it was just a shift when I started thinking of, you know, tweaking things to have a linear impact versus an exponential impact. And one takeaway I want you to take from this webinar is, these are the things we're going to be talking about today. And I strongly feel that when you dial in each one of these, like I said earlier, you're not going to see, a straight line linear impact. The impact from getting all of these dialed in is truly going to be exponential. So I want you to see these as levers that as a in-house agency, as a just a outside agency, um, as a CMO, these are levers you can pull on, and when you get them right, you're gonna really take off like a rocket. And this is how we're gonna meet our higher expectations that have been placed on us as agency owners and CMOs and people directing in-house teams. So starting with messaging, generally where we start as a branding and advertising agency. And the foundation of strong messaging is knowing your audience inside and out. You want to know who they are, what keeps them up at night, what are their pain points, what are their desires, and your copy, your messaging really needs to speak to that and be offering solutions. You want to speak their language, not necessarily industry jargon. And I think when we come in and we change things, you know, if you're an engineering firm but your buyer's not engineering, your buyer's not not going to speak like an engineer or digest information like an engineer. So when it comes to messaging, know your audience. It's really about your audience. Just going into the next point, your brand is really about your audience and your target customer. So everything I'm going to talk about here, and certainly the third bullet point here, psychological triggers. As a branding agency, you're always going to hear me and Eleanor say calls to action. If you're going to leverage scarcity, social proof, it all needs to be appropriate to your brand voice that you've set. And we need to have a cohesive brand identity, and it's really important to have that brand voice document and to have really thought that out before you're embarking on your marketing or advertising campaign. It's really important to have that thought out, and within that document to speak to what your brand voice should look like as you start an advertising campaign. And there might be when you're doing a modern advertising campaigns, there's going to be a little bit of a different voice for a professional platform like LinkedIn versus Facebook. But this all really needs to be thought out and it needs to be consistent. And one of the challenges we talked about earlier was, misalignment between vendors. Well, having a consistent brand voice and having these documents is going to really help make sure that happens. And I'm going to talk about customer experience, and that might sound weird on an advertising webinar to talk about customer experience, but they all play in, and your brand really plays into your customer experience and vice versa. Your brand voice is going to tell customers what to expect, and then your customer service needs to live up to that. Your products need to live up to that. So it is circular in that way. Um, so for me, this slide is messaging, but it's also content. So I did not want to talk about messaging without talking about psychological triggers. This is something huge we see. This is one of the levers we're going to pull on. We're gonna have a massive impact here. If you don't know psychology in advertising and what works and what doesn't work, just please read it. Even just spend a couple hours going over it. There's things like leveraging scarcity. We've all heard of fear of missing out. There's these psychological things we can do that are going to improve our messaging copy. Social proof. We're at the end. We're very tribal still. So when we see a peer or someone we see as a peer giving a good testimonial, there's a psychological trigger there that makes it much more the campaign much more effective. And then I have reciprocity in here, and this is maybe this goes a little bit past messaging and more into content, but you want to really offer value. And that's gonna, what is your offer in your campaign? What is the offer of the landing page? What is the offer of your product? You want to be offering value in your messaging. You want to be offering value in your content and what you're giving the prospect. Um, and so these psychological triggers, something that has a massive impact. Now, Eleanor and I are always, you know, going back and forth between ensuring that we're using psychology in advertising, but it's also consistent with the brand voice. Because you don't want to do anything that's inappropriate for your brand voice. So all this has to be very balanced. And also, I really encourage you to look at, the psychology of how people scan a website, how people scan a landing page. Um, and it's really has it's one of these levers that's going to have an exponential impact. Calls to action. This has to be on this slide. We all know it, but we'll see, clients advertising for advertising's sake and not having a clear, direct, compelling call to action to, drive a user journey for the user. So it's very important that you have clear calls to action in your advertising, in your messaging, in everything you do. Um, so there's a lot more that we could go over here. Test and refine. We always want to be testing and refining. And when we're doing A/B testing and when we're going through our ad sets, we're going through our ads and Meta, and we're thinking about which ones to toggle on, which ones to spend more on. Messaging is one of the things, messaging and copywriting and advertising. It's one of those things we really want to pay attention above just the visuals. And we want to, refine our messaging. We want to see which ones are working. And if something's not working, we want to turn it off. So we always want to be testing and refining within messaging. All right, so targeting. I'm going to start with cold and warm traffic here. I think this is a big shift as advertisers in our thinking. Eleanor and I, when we're creating an advertising campaign, a marketing campaign, we're thinking in terms of segmenting the campaign between cold traffic and warm traffic. And I really encourage you to start thinking about your advertising campaigns through this lens. Cold traffic are those folks who have not heard of our brand. And warm traffic are folks who are familiar with our brand. They've seen our ads, and so they're more familiar. And when you're targeting, you're obviously your cold traffic is gonna be much different than your warm traffic. Your warm traffic, that's gonna be your retargeting. That's gonna be people who watched a certain amount of time of a Facebook video or visited your website. Um, and we want to really look at targeting these differently, but when we go over creative too, we want to look at creating different creative as well. And when it comes to targeting with cold, we want to be our philosophy is to be much more focused on the platform we're doing cold. And then when we're targeting on warm traffic, okay, we already know the audience, so we could go Google Ads, Google Display, we can do Instagram, we can do Meta, we can do YouTube. We can be much more broad with our warm traffic campaigns, but when we're targeting for a cold, we're going to be very focused and we're going to be very selective on the platform, especially when we're working with organizations that have smaller budgets, 200,000 to $500,000 a year. We're going to be, we want a very focused approach on what our cold campaign is, and we want to limit our targeting on the platforms. So when it comes to targeting, also understanding your audience. I spoke to this before. We want a younger audience, but we're going to be on broadcast, or when it's behavioral targeting or targeting within Meta. You really want to dial down your demographics and make sure you understand who they are, and where they engage. Retargeting, this is something we see. This is one of these levers, and this is really warm traffic too. If you're not doing retargeting and you are doing advertising, you need to do it. And that's again, someone visits your website, they use it. Maybe you have an app, they use your app, they see a Facebook ad at a certain level of frequency, they watch a video for a certain amount of time. Um, a common mistake we see is organizations not doing retargeting, and this is the number one low-hanging fruit in advertising, is making sure that you have a very strong retargeting campaign. And like I said, cold campaigns, we want to be really focused, but warm traffic, we can be a little bit broader. Warm traffic or retargeting, we can be a little bit broader right there. I mentioned lookalike audiences here because this is a huge thing in targeting. Lookalike audiences, we can take data we have, if it's a CRM, if it's some sort of enterprise software we have with our customers, we can upload it. We can give it to our cable provider. We can give it to our streaming TV provider. We can give it to Facebook. We can give it to Google, and they're going to create audiences that look just like the data we just gave them. So this is a great way to use data and focus a cold traffic campaign by uploading to these platforms data that you have about your customers, and they go out and find ones that are similar. So lookalike audience is something that we regularly use, and when it comes to targeting your campaigns, it's something that has a massive impact. Creative quality. So I wanted to dive into this. I alluded to this. Number one thing we see is creative assets that might be for a traditional platform, but using them for a new platform like Instagram Reels or TikTok or just Meta in general. So you really want to make sure that your creative is meant for the platform. Like I said, there's a specific formula for a reel. There's a specific formula for a broadcast ad. There's a specific formula for a YouTube ad. So when you're going and you're doing your creative, whether you're using a production team, your in-house team, you want to make sure that you're thinking of these best practices and you can do different cuts of your creative, or if you're just focusing on one that it's truly fitting for the platform that you're being on. And again, I wanted to just mention brand voice. It's really important to make sure that your visuals are on brand and have that cohesive brand feel. And again, if you're working with different vendors, if you have a graphic designer making some graphics for Meta, and you have someone different doing video, it's really important that your intro cards, your end cards line up, and that all the ads really have a cohesive feel. So we do a lot of storytelling here, and emotionally engaging content is the best type of creative that you're going to see out there. Those that evoke emotions, whether there's an emotional story to tell, or even humor. Engaging content is really one of those things when we talk about creative quality. It's going to be one of those levers that you can pull to get that exponential contact. So when you are creating quality, when you're doing creative, just make sure that you are making it engaging and that emotional connection. So there's a million stats on having a video first approach. For me, I love video because, like I said, we can do a video on social or a reel, and we can see how long someone watched that reel or watched that video. And that could be a cold campaign. And then we can go and do a warm campaign based off of how they interacted with that. So that's one reason why video is great. Photography does well on Meta. It uses one sense, just visual, where video brings in another sense. It brings in audio too. So video is just it's a more engaging medium, and we see much higher impact with advertising campaigns that have a video component. Now we've created all this great creative. We've tailored it for the platform. It has a consistent voice. We've made it engaging, and we used video. Something we see, and I wanted to mention, is another one of these levers. We see clients, let's say they do all these things, but they don't think about the user journey. They don't think about, after we see this ad, where are we going? And after I give you my information, how are you going to be following up with me? So it's really important not to just, follow these best practices that we're giving you here, but to also think about, what do your landing pages look like? And then how's your nurturing campaign going to be? And there's so many marketing automation tools to help you do a nurturing campaign. So there's it's easy to do, but it's another one of these levers that you need to make sure that your landing pages and your nurturing campaigns are set up the way that they should be, or that they just exist at all. So platform selection, we talked about how times have really changed. I pulled some statistics here that I actually found shocking. Um, the first one is 5.42 billion people are active on a monthly basis on social media. I can't believe that, how high that number is. Um, and those 5.2 billion people, they're spending an average of 2.5 hours a day. So Facebook has around 3 billion active monthly users. YouTube has 2.5 billion, TikTok 1.5 billion. So it's really massive how fast it's grown. Um, I did want to talk about, linear services too. And so streaming video, the Hulus, the Netflixes, is now accounting for 43.3% of all total video usage. And cable is at 23.8 and broadcast is at 22.4. Now that doesn't add up to 100 because there's like around a 10% that is classified as other. But I've really found this eye-opening to how fast people are changing their habits. Um, we do a lot of cable and broadcast TV as well as social and digital, but when it comes up to platform selection, it's just like targeting. It's making sure where's your audience? What are they doing? Are they more on social media, or are they more on broadcast? There is a certain demographic that local news is something we're on a lot, because there's that certain demographic that wants to see the local news every day. Um, but I just wanted to share that to see how much things have shifted to streaming and also social media. And then just another note here, the quote here is: the number of US households subscribing to cable TV has been steadily decreasing, with 16.1 million subscribers in 2024, down from 72.2 million in December 2023. So that's a huge drop in just 1 year. So just kind of putting it out there, really investigate the shift that's going on. Um, so you really got to pick the platform that your audience is on, and I'll tell you, as a branding and advertising agency, we're doing a lot of Meta, we're doing a lot of Facebook, we're doing a lot of Google ads, we're doing a lot of YouTube, and for certain demographics, we're doing cable and broadcast. So you really want to, in your strategy and your plan, start with what platform that they're on. So a mistake we see is I have purposeful presence here. Again, when we are taking over a strategy for a client, something we see is, we do a radio campaign because I'm buddies with the radio rep, or we've worked with them forever, or we do a cable or broadcast campaign for the same reasons. As I said, we look at the world through cold and warm, and with cold, reaching out to people who aren't as familiar with your brand. It's really important to be strategic with those dollars and very focused, and to make sure that the platform you choose is, the clear strategic one. Um, and that's commonly what we see is we're on the platform we've always been on. The rep comes into the our retail shop, or stops by our corporate headquarters, drops off candies every year around Christmas time. Um, but when it comes to the platform, it's 2025. It's time you take a hard look at who your audience is, and what platform is going to be the best one. And we see clients, they spin a lot of plates when it comes to platforms. Oh, I'll spend 25,000 here, and 10,000 here, and 50,000 here. Um, you got to take a hard look and see, if we went all in on one platform, or maybe two platforms, would we get better results? So I think when it comes to choosing platforms, less is more. Um, and again, we think of the world in terms of cold and warm traffic. It's much more important, in my opinion, to be more selective on your cold campaign. Your warm campaign, it can be more broad. You can take more platforms because we already know the audience. They've already engaged with our content. Um, they've already been to our website. They've already liked our social page. So we can be much more broad. And generally, the warm campaign is going to be probably 10% of your cold traffic campaign as far as spend. But cold, we want to really be selective on what platforms that we go on. Just some things here with tracking. Um, I have actionable metrics. For me, that means, not just impressions, not just clicks, not just followers, not just likes, not vanity metrics. When we're tracking, we need to have goals set up, whether it's in Google Analytics or, a third-party software, so that we know when we're converting an action, whether it's when we're getting customers' information, or if we have an online store, when a sale's been completed. Um, so it's very important to make sure that you're focusing on the right metrics, not vanity ones, but also that they are aligned and set up properly, um, really through goal conversions. And Google Analytics is the most common one. Um, and again, these goal conversions, they really should align with key performance indicators that your business has. And not vanity metrics, not impressions, not likes, etc. So really take a hard look and sit down with the executives, um, and sit down with the marketing team and say, what are the actual indicators, the KPIs that are going to move the needle? What are the actual ones that we want to track, and get them set up? And do we want to track them daily? Do we want to track them weekly? Do we want to track them monthly? But they really need to be tied to business objectives. Google Analytics has all these cool tools. It's free, and you can track the user behavior through the whole advertising journey, and specifically on your website. And it's really important to see if you have a CRM, a marketing automation tool, your website, not just tracking the goal conversions, but also seeing, the behavior users are taking as they're going through their journey, whether it's through a funnel or your website. So make sure, whether it's in Google Analytics, that you're, using the tools there to track, where are they dropping off? Where are they dropping off in the journey? And is there some friction point there that's making that happen? The last two slides, you know, we want to set a time, daily, weekly, monthly, that we're tracking these KPIs, and we want to take a hard look at what's working and what's not, and make sure that we're advertising, we're optimizing the campaigns. So that might be, this ad set is leading to 150 goal conversions this month, but we have one over here that's only doing the 30. What's working in this one that's getting 150? Um, let's create a couple new ones like that, and let's pause the one that's working. So it's important to take this data and then go into Google Ads, go into Meta, um, and make those decisions. Put more funds behind what's working and pause um, the ones that aren't. So I said I was going to try to keep this to 40, under 40 minutes. So we're getting there. I did not want to have this webinar without talking about customer experience. For us as people who are in charge of the brand for organizations, in charge of the message that's going out there, um, this can kind of be the toughest part because it's really important that the experience customers have matches up with our message and matches up with our brand. So, this is one of the hardest parts I see for marketers. Locally here, I mean, I think we have a lot of organizations that really their customer experience lives up to their brand. And there's a lot of executive teams that are making sure this happens. But as marketers, there's only so much we can control, and hopefully we have team members that peers that are proactive in helping the customer experience match our brand and match our promises we're making in our messaging and our marketing. But it's really important that the experience is seamless across what's coming across in your creative, what's coming across in your videos, what we're promising in our ads, um, is experienced when the users are interacting with our customer service in our company. So, for instance, so many times we do a great ad campaign, we're getting the results, but salespeople aren't getting back, or they're not using the actual leads, or maybe you pick up the phone and call and you wait for 30 minutes. So customer experience, I mean, I think whatever team's in charge of this, operations, it's really important to there to be communication between them and marketing, and make sure that um, you know and also sales and marketing that we're following up on these leads, we're being responsive, and we're really living up to our brand and what we're promising in our messaging and what we're promising in our advertising, that the customer experience matches it. We can go out there and promote, let's say a hospitality business, um, show the great food, the great service, speak to it. But when a customer goes in there and doesn't live up to the experience, it's a big problem. Um, so just want to say this is another one of the levers we see. Um, the better the customer experience, the better it lines up with the brand, the more successful everything is going to be. We're going to be turning users into customers and into brand advocates. Um, and just the last thing on here, with all of these things we've talked about tracking and testing. It's important to, ask for feedback, and be continuously improving, um, based off of customer experiences. Um, we all know reviews are a great way to hear that. Um, you know, um, Surveys are a great way to get this, and sort of take a pulse of where that is. So, customer experience, it is another one of these things that when lined up with all the other things we've discussed here, leads to exponential growth within marketing campaigns. Um, so I try to keep these webinars really light. Um, so that's really all I wanted to talk about today. I'm going to be sending the slides out to everyone. Excuse me. I have my email, my phone. If you want to call, shoot a text. Um, Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. Be on the lookout for future webinars. Eleanor, did anyone message you anything? I didn't see anything come in on chat.
No, I didn't see anything come through, but if anybody has any questions that they weren't able to ask on the webinar, feel free to reach out to either Peter or myself. My email is just eleanor@brassbound.com. It's spelled exactly as it is here. But yeah, don't be a stranger. Look forward to hearing from you.
Um, so I try to keep these short. So what do you think, Eleanor? Should we wait a couple minutes, or do you want to? People want to email us questions, or
I think now is as good a time as any to head out.
all right? Thank you, everyone. We're around if you have any questions.